Thank you for joining our webinar, Overview, Generative AI and Data in U.S. K-12 Education. We would like to share a few housekeeping items before we begin. All of your phones are muted for the duration of the call. You can ask a question or post a comment in the chat window. Take a look for the chat window now and feel free to introduce yourself and say where you're from. This webinar will be recorded and sent to all registrants, plus it will be posted on the AASA website. The webinar is also being streamed on Facebook Live. AASA is pleased to bring you this webinar with Kovexa, an advisory company focused on accelerating the change in education. Kovexa works to improve education with solutions and offerings using artificial intelligence and the creation of curriculum pathways for high-tech skills. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Andrew Ko, President of Kovexa and AASA's newly announced Chief Innovation Advisor. Andrew brings a wealth of expertise to AASA, including a collaborative assembly of luminaries in the education and technology fields, and an operations team with extensive experience in education innovation. Andrew has spent the last 25 years of his professional career developing a well-rounded set of skills, including sales, business development, consulting, accounting, and corporate restructuring for the top management consulting and technology companies in the world. His global industry experiences include education, automotive, banking, defense, counterterrorism, and health and human services. Take it away, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Lee, and thank you all for AASA, and I'm really excited on behalf of all the folks here at Kovexa to be partnering with AASA. And as part of the introductory, this is one of the first webinar that we are conducting, and we're really excited for all the panelists, the participants, but I also want to definitely thank all the staff at AASA when it comes to really helping set this up in such a short period of time. And we have lots of things to talk about today. I want to set the stage a little bit because we do have so many incredible panelists and also a lot of things to cover. And we also realized the first question I used to get was, hey, we already had a three-part series with AASA's webinar when it comes to generative AI. And I would say they were incredible. Actually, we looked through all of them and coordinated and understood that a lot of those webinars were very informative and had the voice of the practitioner, the administrators, and all the associations affiliated with it. Today, slightly different, we're going to have the technology companies, and we do have an incredible panelist of technologists and the representation of the companies and all the offerings and services that they have, that we think would also be another different angle to look at and understand and appreciate the generative AI market and how it's developing. Secondly, we also did a little bit of a survey. It's not a very scientific survey, but just based on this, we wanted to really appreciate the members of AASA. And so a light survey was out to collect back some of the information. I want to go into that a little bit, and we'll have some time for some Q&A afterwards. And let me go in right now with some of the survey results that we saw. Not surprisingly, only about 26% of the survey participants said that they're very familiar with generative AI. And I think that's probably indicative of the overall market. It feels like it kind of caught us all by storm, but I'll definitely say a lot of the technologists, we kind of saw this developing for some years as a lot of the technology has just been incredibly maturing over the years. But we'll definitely use this opportunity to provide some overall guidance. But if you want some of the basic stuff, encourage you to go back to the other three AASA webinars, and I think you'll get an incredible wealth of some of the fundamentals. Biggest concern, privacy, bias, accuracy, just 87%. That was the overwhelming concern when it came to administrators and superintendents about their areas of where they have the concerns. Not surprising. Privacy and data, not surprising. And then even the cheating, ethical, adhering to certain policies are also very, very top of mind. But there are other areas that I think we're going to discuss that may not be as apparent or in the news, but something very important to also understand. The benefits, personalized learning and improving student engagement, 63%. So across the board, everyone sees the benefit of it. I don't think that's going to be in doubt at all. And today, we're going to hopefully hear some case studies of some real activities, what's really happening, of how some of those benefits are being piloted and potentially realized. Next slide. Next slide. As a part of as the awareness is starting to grow, we were also really asking to inquire how prepared are. So you might not know a lot. And surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, about almost 60% said not prepared at all. And that's why there's a lot of these webinars to really get a lot of the basic data, but also provide some guidance, some resources, or even some ideas that may go to the next level to hopefully get that preparation a little bit better. What was really asked about is, well, what do you need to do to prepare? And this is where I'd say pretty much 75%, 74% said PD for educators, not just for teachers, administrators. We need to get them ready. And that seems to be a huge gap. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the skills that are necessarily going to be important for educators, administrators, and obviously parents and students all across the board. So really, really much exciting stuff there. And the part that I would always say is there's always been this fear, uncertainty, and doubt around this new introduction of technology. I will assure you, for the 25 years I've spent in technology, it's a natural, we'll call it excitement and concern. And what was really positive about this survey is 100% of the survey participants said, look, I'm not ready to try now, but I want to learn to try. And all of them said that they're open for that. And 0 said, no, I'm not going to do it. Now, some of it could be because they probably know that this wave is going to happen. But the positive thing is they're willing to give it a try, even in the early stages. And so I think that's going to be some exciting stuff we can talk a little bit about as well. So without me taking up too much time, I'd like to really introduce our incredible panelists. And I want to thank each one of them, because I know that they're super busy with a lot of things that are going on in this topic, and they've come together in order to provide some information. And so we're really excited to have Kristen Serbo from Khan Academy, that is the Chief Learning Officer, Kim Majerus, the Vice President of Global Education and State and Local Government for Amazon Web Services, Serena Sachs-Mandel, the Chief Technology Officer worldwide for Microsoft, and Sam Sen, the Founder, Principal, and CEO of Learning Mate Solutions. And of course, I can't forget our friends at Google with Shantanu Sinha, who is the Vice President and General Manager for Google Education. Now, as they begin, I've asked each one to spend a few minutes to just introduce themselves a little bit, but also their company and what they're thinking about when it comes to generative AI in the K-12. So let me first hand it over to Ms. Serena Sachs-Mandel to kick us off, and then I will introduce the next speakers right after, and then we'll go right into Q&A sessions. Serena?
Hi, thanks so much, Andrew, and thank you all for joining us today. I'll tell you, I'm super looking forward to hearing from the other panelists as well, so I think this is going to be an excellent session. As you said, I'm Serena Sachs-Mandel. I'm the Global CTO for Education at Microsoft. My background includes 25 years in corporate IT and 15 years in educational technology, including 10 years as the CIO of Florida Virtual School and Fulton County Schools. So I know what you're thinking. I started my career at 12, and you'd be right. So, and going to are we going to look at the charts now too? Okay. So, little background about Microsoft and OpenAI. I know that everyone thinks that ChatGPT is Microsoft or it is generative AI, but they are different. So OpenAI is a long-standing partner for Microsoft, and in January 2023, we announced a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar investment. OpenAI is a unique partner, and it is small with a huge amount of talent that drives foundational research breakthroughs and holds many of our shared values. So as part of that partnership, we are working together on developing AI technologies, building AI computing platforms, advancing AI research, and making AI more accessible. We've also made investments in OpenAI that allow the company to use Microsoft Azure as its preferred cloud platform. And that allows OpenAI to tap into the vast resources of Microsoft and accelerate its research. Overall, the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI aims to accelerate the development and use of advanced AI technologies with a focus on making AI more accessible to developers and organizations and bringing the benefits of AI to more people. So next chart. we asked business leaders, so similar to the survey results that Andrew just showed, we asked business leaders what skills will be required to succeed in the AI era. So this is not necessarily educational leaders, these are business leaders across every industry. And this is what they told us. So what you might be surprised about is that most of these skills are human skills, not technology skills. And this shows us that we're really going to need educators to be empathetic and nurturing educators to help our students learn the truly human skills to leverage AI and be successful in their careers. So I found this extremely eye-opening that we as educators need to be more human-centric and at the same time help our students learn AI and leverage it in their work. And then finally, that will help them get into their career and workforce. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Serena. And I know that this PD, as we described early from the survey, was incredibly important. So we're going to go save some questions for Serena and some others on that topic. In the meantime, let me hand it over to Shantanu.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shantanu Sen, and I lead our education team at Google. So we focus on bringing Google products like Google Workspace and Chromebooks to education, as well as building out education-specific functionality, really supporting the unique needs of educators with products like Google Classroom. So I'm really excited about this topic. AI has been something that is definitely top of mind for Google and also top of mind for myself. 25 years ago, I did my master's thesis on artificial intelligence, working on neural networks, and it's just been amazing to see how the space has evolved, the credible benefits it can provide, but also understanding the shortcomings that we have to be aware of. So, as many of you know, at Google, we've been working on AI for quite a few years. And I think this quote from Kent Walker captures it quite well. AI is something that is both absolutely revolutionary, can change so much of what we're doing in our lives, but it's also something that's been around for a while. It's been something that we've been incorporated and working on for many years. And because of the time that we spent thinking about AI and the benefits and the risk, we actually had a lot of time to really think about how to have the right AI principles to inform our approach in the space. So back in 2018, Google announced our AI principles. You can read them at ai.google. In there, we talk about the importance to really ensure that the deployment of AI is in a way that is socially beneficial, but built with safety, privacy, potential biases in mind. And within education, we definitely recognize the higher stakes here. And we strive to take a really balanced approach that's both bold in creating positive impact for our users, but very responsible. So, as we build features within our team, one of the things that I ask everybody to do is to really evaluate it, to understand the full impact of those features. And we have a long checklist. This is a good kind of sample of the type of things that we look at to make sure that we really understand the benefits for our users and are very cognizant of the potential shortcomings or the risk. Go to the next slide. Now, that said, we definitely see that there is, amazing potential there. AI is absolutely at an inflection point, and it holds incredible promise to improve teaching and learning journeys, and we're looking at many ways of incorporating and bringing it through our products. First and foremost, we see that AI has a real potential to help elevate the teacher by making them far more efficient and effective. As an example, we recently announced Duet AI, which incorporates generative AI functionality across the Google Workspace suite, across applications like Slides and Docs. And we really see it as a way to help kind of supercharge the teacher and administrator workflows, whether it's creating presentations for lessons or writing a customized personal emails to 30 students. AI can really be at your side in supporting those journeys. The second thing we see a huge benefit for is really making learning much more personal. And we've begun to incorporate it into a number of different areas. So as an example, AI can provide targeted help to students when they need it, where they need it. We recently launched practice sets within Google Classroom, where teachers can create assignments and in it actually have hints available for students so that when they get stuck on a problem, they can get the exact help that they need. Really making the experience more personal, but ensuring that the teacher is in full control of exactly what students see and making sure it's completely aligned to their curriculum. AI also has the potential to make learning experiences far more interactive and far more accessible. And this is really the beginning. As I said, we're at an inflection point. We see a lot of potential of where it can go. We've been really excited at Google to help innovate on what AI can do, help bring that to the world, but also figure out how we can bring that boldly and responsibly into our products to really help the teaching and learning workflows.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Antonio. And I know that there's a lot of excitement around it because I'm sure, probably not allowed to disclose a lot of new releases, but I'm very, very optimistic of some positive things coming out of the new solutions there. Thank you. Now, Kim, my old buddy, how are you, man?
It's great to see you, Andrew. And thanks for having us on. So just a quick little bit about me, and I echo Serena's comments. Sometimes I feel like I've been doing this longer than the years I should be. It's like disclosing your age, which I never would want to do. But I've been in tech for a long time. I've had responsibilities through public safety, public sector, education through the course of my career. I've been here at AWS for almost 7 years. And it's a privilege and an honor to serve as the Vice President of Global Education and also the U.S. state and local government here at AWS. But, education is by far one of the most important things that I've been able to focus and support, not only because it's been a part of my own journey, but genuinely because it's an opportunity to shape how the world could look, and it'll define what the future could be. And that's through the amazing work of teachers everywhere, because they're building the next generation workforce. So the modern education landscape is built on AWS. We have more than 14,000 K-12 districts and nearly 4,000 higher education institutions that have come to AWS to help them harness technology and how they can actually leverage it within their space. I have the luxury of having both sides of the opportunity to support, and that is through the institutional side, but also really the ed techs. And those are the ones that many of you are very familiar with. Those ed techs have been the strength to help schools traverse net new solutions to help solve for some of the biggest challenges that we have in education overall. But I will say we had our PubSec Summit recently, and where we had thousands of folks come into DC. And I have to say, if you haven't heard it, which is probably why we're doing this type of event, there's a lot of questions from our education customers about AI, and more specifically about generative AI. There's immense interest, curiosity, and as we've heard from some of the other speakers, some apprehension. But I really hope that we could ease that apprehension today, or at least demystify what generative AI, because I do see it as a tremendous opportunity to improve student outcomes and simplify processes and automate repetitive tasks for our educators and our administrators. Because at the end of the day, we have to empower those teachers to do more, to reach differently. I think we're seeing that opportunity. But what I wanted to do today is just provide some AI use cases in education and highlight a few of them that are actually on the slide that you see now. So when you think about the personalized or adaptive learning, we heard that on a previous speaker, it's really creating that learning experience for students by analyzing their writing and their responses and provide tailored feedback and suggestions to help them align with what their specific needs are. Historically, and I think about when I went to school, Andrew, I think you'd probably feel the same way. We'd have to wait a week to find out, did we do well or did we not? But the opportunity becomes so much more real time for them so that they can learn in a different way. Think about a self-service tutor or chatbot. Using that conversational interface to understand what student progress, prompt activities, and response to questions, that is one that I'm hearing more and more from some of the instructors that we see. And then think about text outlining, generating outlines to help students quickly understand what are those main points and organize their thoughts in writing. That's so important because as these students' minds continue to evolve, providing them with new skills and new capabilities really does make a difference. Why don't we jump to the next slide? It is a true turning point for education. When it comes to generative AI, institutions have to approach it in a multiple of ways. Do you ban it? Do you embrace it? Do you control it? We heard some amazing use cases from I was actually out in Geneva, Switzerland recently for the Global Economic Forum. It was the Growth Advisory, and we were talking about education. But you can't ban it. Wherever you're at and however your student engages, they always will have technology. So banning it makes it a little bit more difficult. But I think the opportunity is to embrace it and empower those teachers, because at the end of the day, we need them and we need the technology to help go faster. But that really is about innovation. And at AWS, innovation is constant, change is constant, and we are working with our education customers to help them think through some of these implications of what these new tools are so that they can use the tools and leverage them appropriately, but more importantly, responsibility. Academic integrity is top of mind, I know, for many of those that are probably actually listening in. The tools that are generative AI require that we have to rethink some of the aspects of how we teach and, more importantly, how our students learn. But for instance, how do they build policies? Think about the institutions. They have to go back and figure out, what are the guardrails? What do they feel is acceptable use? Do educators change their methods for teaching and evaluating writing skills? And of course, students actually need to be taught about ethical behavior, academic integrity, and have that self-direction to really commit to those learning outcomes so that we could build those 21st century skills and enabling them to be probably one of our biggest challenges. And Andrew, I love some of the survey stuff that you did in the beginning. What does the workforce of the future look like? And are they ready? Is it about the degree or is it about the skill? So, AI and ML can do a lot of things. We all have to recognize that it does not replace that unique role that educators play to engage, understand, nurture, and absolutely communicate with those students. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of direction of what we're looking at.
Thank you very much, Kim. And there's definitely a lot of things in there. I would even ask the audience a little bit before I go to Sam, what are your thoughts? I'm seeing a couple chatter. Yes, it's overwhelming, and we're going to get to hopefully covering some of that. And there's been so much talk about it, but where are you seeing it being positive, or where are you seeing it absolutely a big concern that may or may not have been covered? But I'd love to hear the folks and the participants on the chat room to also surface any questions. But without further ado, Sam, I'll hand it over to you for a lot of your good overview and thoughts about generative AI and K-12.
Thank you, Andrew. Just to introduce myself, I'm Sam. I founded LearningMate almost 2 decades back, but I just wanted to give you a background. I grew up in India in a working class neighborhood, which had very few good schools. And I was lucky to basically get into one of them. But I had many friends in my life who didn't make it. And it left an impression on me, which I carry to this day. And when I founded LearningMate, it's with that goal of ensuring that at least, I can help people have the same opportunities or the same level playing field in one way or the other. So my hashtag is #same starting line. It's extremely important for people to understand that. And it's no wonder that, I and some of my friends ended up founding the company that would do this as a mission. For the next 20 years, we founded the company in 2003. And our mission is exactly that. How do you make education more accessible and equitable both across the world? Long story short, of course, it's been a 20-year journey. We are a company that works alongside schools, government departments of education. We work with higher education. We work with workforce development boards. We work across the world, across many different countries, US being one of our major markets. And we are 3,000 people, but highly committed. Every one of them is an EdTech specialist, whether they're an instructional designer or curriculum specialist or data engineer and all of that. And the work we do is essentially partnering with our clients and our schools and colleges to help them create equitable platforms for online learning. And we help them build curriculum, we help them get their platforms together, make good use of their money so that they can reach the maximum number of students, and also create data infrastructure and all of that. So that's a little bit about what LearningMate does. On this slide, of course, I've actually spent a good part of my life standing in a classroom and teaching, because I believe if you didn't do that, you won't design well. And one of the graphs on this is, if you look at a teacher's time right across the board, 50% of their time is spent in doing things that really is not spent teaching the student. So it's a lot of administrative work. And it is something that bothers me a lot, because if we're not able to spend time with students as teachers, that's counterproductive. In fact, on actual instruction, if you can kind of look at this graph a bit, student instruction and engagement is only 16.5% of that, 16.5 hours. The rest of it is all administrative stuff. So I think when we talk of AI, what should AI do? I think a lot of us are focusing on what AI should do as a tutor, as personalized learning assistant. My goal would be to first cut out all those administrative tasks that help the teacher, spend more time with students and free up their time, literally. And I think, if that's our first goal, I think it would change the world by a lot. And it will allow teachers to teach more students effectively, spend time with them, and it would be a fun world. On the bottom, if you can kind of see, we've started doing some work in machine learning, AI, and all of that. And we realized, if you, at least when I was a teacher and, there were a lot of data being thrown at me, I was quite sick about not knowing what to do with that data. And I think data should be conversational. Now with AI, we can have conversational data. And these are some of those conversational, data dashboards, if you will, that talks in a simple language to people. So I think AI can do all of these things, and there are several examples of that. But I would also caution you about what AI can do and what you can expect out of it. And that's there on this chart, which goes from the 5 levels we have described, from what happened to what can be improved or automated using AI. And if we think in a context of AI where, we are talking about AI being the guru, again, in a very different way, to become a guru, you have to actually go through 7 levels of teaching, right? And I'll talk about that 7 levels sometime else, but we have to understand that AI has limitations. And while there is the hype around AI and what it can do and perhaps what it can accomplish, if you go to the next slide, there's a lot of work that needs to be done before the promise of AI can actually be realized. So on the left-hand side, I have the AI promise and AI in action, and that big green arrow goes from left to right, is literally telling us that there is a foundational layer for AI for it to work effectively. And what is that foundation? One is your data needs to be of good quality, in good shape, organized well. And most of mother districts and most of the clients I can go to Many of them have got good foundational data. Some of them are not there. Some of them have yet to start on this journey. The second part of it is your content needs to be organized well, both data and content, right? And if these two fundamental building blocks are there, then, you can fine tune your model and then, kind of do all the annotation and everything that comes with it. And then, obviously on the blue layer, there are people who will come and build the apps on top of this foundational layer using, generative AI models beneath them. And then there is the student experience that you will design at the end of it. So it's not that AI will start working magically. One day, you have an app. There's a lot of work that needs to be done behind that. And there's a whole lot of humans in the loop that can make this happen. And there are white papers written on this. Also, I kind of caution you on the cost of AI, because the infrastructure cost running behind this is massive. So we really don't know what it'll cost and what it'll take for us to run these things. With that, I'll end my little talk. But I sounded a little cautious in my keynote as opposed to my colleagues, but I'm a practitioner, so I do all the plumbing behind all of this stuff, all these beautiful products that are out there. It's our job to make it work and do the heavy lifting. So that's where I come from. Thanks.
Absolutely, Sam, and thank you for that overview. And as you can tell, Sam is the practitioner, the one, excuse me, behind the scene that makes sure that everything works right and is in compliance. So with that, let me switch it over to Kristen from Khan Academy.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. So I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Khan Academy. I lead our content team, the folks that build those courses you see, write the questions, work with Sal on all those videos. I also lead our product team, which is the team that works to think about all the features that we have. So as many of you may know, this past March, we launched some AI features on Khan Academy. It's nice to be in this position as a speaker because I hear a lot of the convergence that we're all saying similar things. We agree that we fundamentally think of AI in two ways, as a tutor for students and an assistant for teachers. And in order to do that, on the first side, there's a difference in terms of what we did between what we did and what you get is a response if you just type something into, say, ChatGPT. What we did was said, we want to make this actually act like a tutor. And a tutor, if you ask it a question, does not just give you the answer. A tutor starts to walk you through the steps to answer that question. So over on the left on this slide, if you're familiar with Khan Academy, we have in the blue highlight there, you see, yeah, you're going to get a math problem, solve this math problem. All right, to the questions in the chat about how do you start, how do you do this? Right now, Khanmigo is in a beta labs place for us. So folks that are part of that can just then pop up Khanmigo, which essentially allows, in this case, students to interact with the large language model, but they're just interacting in this chat space. We pass to the language model both what the student says, in this case, I'm stuck, and we pass about 500, 700 words, it's called a prompt, along with that tells it how to act like a tutor. And so as a result, when the student says, I'm stuck, it says, no worries, let's break this down together. And gives, hey, let's think about what the first step is. We're going to try to isolate those variables on one side of the equation. What else do good tutors do? So in the center here, you say, hey, the student says, can you just give me the answer? And no, it does not. It says, as an AI tutor, my goal is to help you learn and understand the process. And then finally, we think about this age-old question that teachers get asked. Why should I care about learning this? I'm sure there's no math teachers who have ever heard that question before. But again, the next thing it does is not say, oh, you should know about learning this because of X, Y, Z. It starts to have a conversation and says, well, what are you interested in? So we have built based on research and learning science behind the scenes, the ways to guide the model to act more like a tutor for students. definitely in beta mode. We're still learning and understanding how students are using it and what they're doing. But the way we're excited about this is because we know as students move from passive learners just watching things to active learners engaging, to constructive learners where you're creating something, to interactive learners where you're actually interacting that with someone else around the content, that's really powerful for learning. So we think these dialogue-based tutors are an advance from the intelligent tutors we've been working with for the last couple of decades because of that back and forth dialogue capability. And the next slide, you'll see how we think about this for teachers. So we talk about you saw those 10 hours that we saw that teachers spend planning. So how can we help teachers plan more? Again, we've set up a bunch of activities for teachers, everything from, hey, I'm about to start a lesson. Can you help me brainstorm a lesson hook so that I have something that activates students' prior knowledge and gets them excited and gets their creativity going about this topic. So if you click create a lesson hook, it'll ask you, what are you interested, what topic are you covering, what grade level, and it'll suggest some lesson hooks. Same thing with exit tickets as students are leaving. What are questions I can ask to make sure they've understood the lesson? How can I help break this standard down into component learning objectives? All those are things we heard from teachers that are part of that planning process that takes those 10 hours a week and takes teachers away from interacting with students. So we think that I agree with everyone else who said, hey, teachers are learners. And what we hope is that we are providing a bit of that place for people to try this out as part of our beta testing, and that we're learning about this together and thinking about what the opportunities might be.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was incredible. And I want to also say we want to hold on to that beta testing. I want to, for the folks in the audience who are going to stay in here to the end, we're going to ask them about how to do some of those beta testing for some of the folks here as well. But I also want to go back to now some of the questions that we have some based on the survey again, that was really, really important. And I want to go back to what even both Kim and Serena were talking about is professional development skills, not just with the students and the learners themselves, but the actual educators. So a question, and I'm going to start with Serena. I want to go also then with Kristen. How can these generative AI really support educators in adapting their teaching practices to really also meet all the changes in technology that it changes so much? And are there other support systems that they would need in order to really facilitate this transition? So I'll let you, Serena, if you can maybe take that first one and then follow up maybe with Kristen, that'd be great.
Sure. And this is the challenge, is we are learning and we are growing and things are changing so rapidly. So it's really important for not only educators, but the staff and administration of educational organizations to get up to speed on what AI is and what it isn't, so that they can manage some of the risks and take away some of the fear, but then also educate themselves so that they can educate their students. So, Microsoft is developing those resources and has a lot of them out there already. This is not an advertising section, but I'm just mentioning that. But it is so important to really start with productivity enhancements in the organization. There's lots of opportunities for personalization and for teaching and learning. But before we dive into student-centric use of generative AI, which is still in preview in a lot of places, it's important to help our teachers be more efficient and more effective, as some of the other panelists have already said. So automating lesson plans, outlines, tests, exams, helping them maybe do a first pass on the grading, and then back office. There's a use case that is just kind of blew me away. One of my colleagues helped a district using just ChatGPT, just the publicly available ChatGPT, to understand all of the scheduling needs of an entire district. And within a 45-minute period, actually had a conversation with ChatGPT, gave it all the parameters, had it do a preliminary schedule for the district, and then said, what's missing? And ChatGPT said PD. So he said, put that in there. And then he said, okay, now what else? And they went back and forth. In fact, if you look at the transcript, there's about 3 times as many questions that ChatGPT asked the prompter than the prompts that were put into ChatGPT. So it asked all these clarifying questions. Within 45 minutes, it not only had the whole district scheduled, it wrote a report, 130 pages of the assumptions and all about the schedule, and personalized letters to the teachers and the board and the parents. And the superintendent exclaimed, that just saved the district 10,000 hours. Now, if we can save that magnitude of hours of administrative work and pour that back into teaching and learning, that's amazing. And I know there's administrators that aren't necessarily in the classroom, but we can pour it back into curriculum and content and supporting the educators in the classroom. And I just think there's amazing possibilities. But back to your question, not everybody can do that prompt session that I just described. So we all have to, meaning educators, staff, administration, we all have to educate ourselves on how to leverage AI. Somebody said recently, is AI going to take my job? And the answer was no, but somebody that knows how to leverage AI will. So if you can leverage it properly, then you're well positioned. And so it is a learning process, and there's a lot of resources out there to skill up.
Yeah, thank you, Serena. And to that point, as I mentioned even earlier, there were 3 other generative AI webinars that occurred. I didn't have 3 hours to watch it through. Sorry, David, everybody. So I literally put the YouTube URL in one of the other AI, and within 3 minutes, all 3, I had the entire summary to all the time at the YouTube with it. And so I saved almost 95% of my time with pretty accurate type of information that quick. So productivity, I think, Serena, is what you're saying, is where the educator could really gain some efficiency. It's very similar to what Sam was saying as well. So I think absolutely, that's probably a low bar in order to get some productivity and some time back for everybody. Kristen, what are your thoughts around this adapting the teacher and then leveraging PD to really enhance teaching and learning?
So I think for teacher professional development, there's 2 things. There's teaching with AI. So how do you bring AI into your classroom? And there's teaching about AI. So that's things like helping increase the digital literacy of your students, particularly around AI. There is a consortium of organizations. We're one of them. Also code.org and ISTE are all members of the steering committee. And then we have about 25 advisory committee members, including some number of the other orgs here. This consortium is called Teach AI. We are next week at ISTE, for those of you who are there, going to be we're going to kind of have a kickoff event there. But I think that's going to be a good place to go. I think many of us as organizations have said, this isn't something that for us at Khan Academy, we can't deliver all of the PD and all of the needs for teachers around the country and the world. So let's come together and do this. So right now there's a website, Teach AI. You can just click to get on the mailing list and they'll send you updates about where things are. So I think that's a good resource to start to kind of bring things together.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I know it's such a big topic. We probably spend the whole afternoon just talking about professional development and still not have enough. And again, just as a little flavor, but I'm going to switch to another topic that's also pretty and very extremely relevant: bias and accuracy. So I want to pose this question to Sam and Kim Majerus. As educators, leaders are figuring out and trying to really understand all the policy and all that, but just technology, from a technology perspective, what are some steps that education institutions could really take to address the biases and fairness that may arise from the use of a lot of these generative AI data? And so I wanted to see, Sam, maybe you could take a start, and then I'll go to Kim as a little bit of a follow-up.
Yeah, I think, I spoke of accuracy in the slide previously. Accuracy is really a term that has this following equation: garbage in is garbage out, right? So essentially, that's the reason I'm saying that what you feed the model and what the model trains on is extremely important. And it's extremely relevant. obviously things like ChatGPT are training on a vast set of parameters and data across the World Wide Web and all of that. But specific to your use case and how you basically want to create your limited boundaries, you got to have great data sets. You got to have great quality of data. You got to have great quality of content to feed it in. And I think Khan Academy is doing an amazing job of this. I would suspect that they have a very well-organized backend to make this happen, and so on and so forth. So I think accuracy is really an outcome of your preparedness of doing this, and doing that. On the thing of bias, I think this is a soft area, if you ask me, and I would kind of take an example of how you bring up your child, literally, and how do you so let's imagine this whole AI thing is a fast growing, developing child, and what you train it for is the biases it will carry on throughout its existence and its life. Luckily, you can, if you can keep training and fine tuning the model for that. When your kid grows up, it's more difficult to do it. But having said that, I think biases is literally a societal thing. It's not a technology thing, if you ask me. And it's got to do with policies. It's got to do with how your culture works. It's got to do with a whole lot of other things that you need to think of. And technology is only the enabler for this. So these are my really short comments on this, and I'll pass it back to Kim.
Yeah. It's definitely a large thing, and I know individuals are even testing other AIs versus other AIs to make sure that there's some commonality or to try to see, but it's overall developing as well. And to your point, the data, the garbage in, garbage out makes a huge difference of the cleansing and all that. And Kim, love to hear your thoughts and what you've been seeing when it comes to those particular topics of accuracy and potentially bias in the actual AI system.
Yeah, I would start, the White House Office of Science Technology actually released the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. So if you haven't seen it, it's something to call your attention to. One of the 5 principles they identified is and it's going to kill me to say it all in one swoop, I can't even say it. Discrimination protections. It occurs when automated systems actually contribute unjustified or different treatment or impacts disfavoring people based on their race, color, ethnicity. So the way we have to look at it, what constitutes responsible AI, that is actually still being debated globally. And it's it's a constant evolution of perception and how they define it. But literally, I could speak to the AWS side. We define responsible AI as made up really of 6 key dimensions: bias and fairness, explainability, robustness, privacy and security, governance, and then transparency. Well, that's our definition today. We continue to iterate as science and engineering of responsible AI continues to mature. But in terms of bias and fairness, we consider how the system impacts those who are subpopulations of users. We want to make sure that there are not harmful disparities in systems performance across subpopulations, but everyone should understand that no algorithm will ever be perfect. One of the most important things that we know is that we feel is it's truly the source, garbage in, garbage out to that point. But understanding that AI foundational model that you're using and how it was trained, you just have to make sure you're using a foundation model that was built in context of students, not some generic model that was not built for education. That's why those use cases are so extremely, it's just so extremely important to understand where you're pulling from, because without that, you don't know.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very solid question, that it's not always a technological thing. You need to make sure and test those algorithms because they're not always going to be perfect. And sometimes AI has a tendency to hallucinate a little bit. Let's talk about something very grounded, and it's also coming from some of the questions in the audience around privacy and security. I would say there's a lot of governing regulations out there, but when it comes to the technology with that, how to really you handle student data, the sensitivities and implications around that, the actual ownership of the data. Is there any suggestions or ideas, or how does the generative AI really allow for these data to be protected and private? I want to first give that to Serena, and then maybe we can get to Shantanu and then Kim with the three the tech companies there.
So we have a philosophy that our customer data is our customer data. We do not train our model on customer data. And somebody actually put in the chat here, do we see smaller models being used? And I do. I think the future will actually be smaller models that are more contained, more accurate, and more specific to the customer's use cases. Just like Sam said, garbage in, garbage out, it has to be high quality. And the best way to manage the quality of the content is to have your own set of content. And if you have it in a self-contained environment, like Azure or whatever cloud you have, then you can protect the data, keep it within that model, as well as the content and the accuracy. So, and every cloud provider has different, and we're always improving them, the data sovereignty to respond to our customers' needs and data residency issues. But if you are keeping it in your tenant and you're using it that way, it is your data, and Microsoft does not use that data for any other purpose, including we do not train our models on customer data.
Thank you. And I'm going to go back to, how about Shantanu, about yourself as well? I know you get asked those questions all the time as well, and how important those two topics are.
Yeah, I think it's a very kind of similar response here, which is I think it's really important to understand what the models are and what your provider is doing with the data. So in general, when we build education apps, so same thing with Google, when we build things with Google Cloud or Google Workspace for education for schools, we circle that data, and that is customer data. It's not used to train things. It's purely customer data, not used for ads personalization, nothing else. It's only used for that and that exact purpose. When you think about generative AI more generally, and if you're seeing so many applications and so many things coming out, I think it's helpful to understand how data comes into these models and what happens. So there's really two different steps here. There's the pre-training, which is building the large foundational model with tons of information. And the way the pre-training works is it is trained on massive amount of information, really almost, think of it as like almost the entire internet, right? Really large amounts of data that helps inform these models on how they're going to behave, how do they understand language and these core things. And then there's a second process at the end of that that's around the fine tuning, the reinforcement learning that crafts the behavior that these models are going to have. Now, in both cases, one thing that's interesting with generative AI is when you pre-train these models on publicly scrubbed data, and to the earlier point with understanding biases and other things that you're feeding into this stuff, it has really powerful characteristics without using any customer data. You don't need customer data. You don't need user data to have really amazing characteristics here. But then when you try to tune it to specific use cases, that's where the real question comes. And I think that's where it's so important to understand each application that you're using and what they're doing with data. You often see the thumbs up and the thumbs down on many of these different apps. That's the data that people will use. They might look at that and say, well, how do I make this model a little bit better? Do I feed it back into the model? And that's where understanding the privacy stance of those applications is very important. And like I said, at Google, we put a big ring fence around customer data, so it isn't going back into the model in those ways. But it's so important to read those privacy policies, understand them, and really, and I know everybody else here would agree, it's very important for tech companies to be as transparent as possible on what's really happening with that data.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that comment. And Kim, I know AWS is a very big proponent of security and privacy. I'd love to hear any additional thoughts that you may have on this topic.
It is a bit of a broad question, but it really goes back to, it does depend on what platform you're using. Much like others, privacy is, number one. Ensuring that data stays and remains is extremely important. But, if you're using a platform that was created with an education student or use case in mind, you could be more confident in answering some of those questions and really what that platform is actually returning. So keep in mind with generative AI, policy considerations are almost equally as important as really that technology consideration. So understand the AI model that you're using, understand how it was trained, and then you go back to the 2 dimensions of using responsible AI. I mentioned earlier bias and fairness, explainability, meaning the mechanisms to understand and evaluate the outputs. But we are seeing a lot of ed tech customers interested in how they could actually use generative AI to do things like summarize textbooks, chapters, automatically mapping content to learner objectives, generate quizzes. I mean, just think about the ability to create a personalized digital tutor that's actually trained to the content for those school uses. But, I would say, I think we're going to see more and more of these use cases as time goes on, because people are going to understand how to leverage it. But in regards to education, we absolutely should not be thinking in terms about, how does generative AI replace teachers? Instead of what we really should be thinking about is in terms about how generative AI can be used. And we heard it in one of the earlier answers was, how do we give those teachers back time? Because if you could give them back time by using the technology, that is a better impact to that student engagement, which I think is what we're all trying to get to.
Absolutely. Now, this is the fear I have. We have 5 and so many other questions. I couldn't get to them all, probably won't, but I am going to send a couple more questions, some from the audience, but I would just ask that we keep it short. I also will say, please continue to send the questions, even if we can't address them all. Send it to info@kovexa.com, and I'll make sure that we get the responses as best as we can as we send that out now. Not yet. Sorry, we're not there yet. Now, just going back, personalization. I'll just kind of ask the 2 of you if it's okay. I'll start with Kristen, and I'll sit Sam and Shantanu. Personalizing was the #1 ask in a short, concise way. How could districts leverage their existing investments to make sure that all this personalization and the content that they may have already made investments work together? Or do they replace them? Real quick, and I'll start with you, Kristen, and then Sam, and then Shantanu, and then we'll get into a couple of the other audience questions, but let's keep it concise.
So what you probably have is a bunch of grade level content, and what you have in your classrooms are a bunch of students at all kinds of different levels. And so your existing content should absolutely, you can still work on that grade level content, whatever that is. But the point is, how do you support all of those students who are 3 to 1 years behind, 1, 2, 3 years above grade level, and think about what they are? And that's where you think about a supplement that can potentially use some of these AI tools to help support that learning. That's my concise answer.
Sam.
Yeah, I think I agree with Kristen. Content scaffolding is what she's talking about. We teach to the middle, and I think that's been our bane for many, many years. I wouldn't blame the British for that, although, they put everybody in the same classroom. But having said that, if we can basically have content that basically goes at every level and enough data that is being fed back for that content to be served back, you can do that. So we work with a very large school, cyber charter school in Pennsylvania. Now, it's grown from 8,000 to 25,000 kids almost today. And this is exactly what we do. We leverage their existing infrastructure, created a data warehouse, created content at different levels. And, today, the reason they grew even after the pandemic, their retention rate is 97%. It's one of the best experiments in the US at scale. And you can do that.
Awesome. Thank you. And then on this final question, Shantanu.
Yeah, just really quickly, one thing, I really agree with the idea of we really should strive to make AI fit the existing workflows and existing content and existing ways that schools operate. I know, going back into the PD question earlier, change is always hard. And I think one of the more important things is not try to change everything for technology, to figure out how technology can really help people where they are and meet them in their existing needs. And I really do think one of the things that I'm most excited about generative AI is that it does have that ability to be very adaptive, and it can really start to bring personalization with your exact content, with your exact workflows, embedded exactly in your work. And I think that's something that as the space evolves, you'll see more and more of that. So it does kind of minimize, trying to disrupt how much change you have to do, but really figure out how do we fit into what you're already doing and just make it so much easier and so much better.
I'm going to say a couple things. I'm going to have one question from the audience, and I want to wrap up, and so maybe a few seconds late here. There was a question about how do we make sure, or the companies and organizations ensure that we don't create a world of AI haves and have-nots, the big challenge of equity across. And maybe I can just point to Kim real quick.
Yeah, I'd hit on probably the biggest foundational challenges we still have ahead of us is really the digital divide. We're talking about advanced technologies to which, if you look at access to internet, as of 2022, 19 million Americans still don't even have primary access. So really, if I were to think about the bigger challenges that will continue to divide opportunity, is access to the internet, access to devices, and really, truly digital literacy. Oh, I can't speak today because it's more important on the use of it and how to engage technology. How do you understand it? And that's a critical piece. But the last piece, which is really what's in that really makes it most important, is how do you create? That third step is really where we change lives and really change the future of a student. And quite frankly, our own future.
Awesome. And with that, I'll say we are at time. There are a lot of other questions. I'll even ask the panelists. One of the questions I did want to say is because there's so much interest from the AASA stakeholder member and audience about sandboxing. Of all the folks on the panelists, how many of you are okay and ready to help pilot and really help the learners of AASA and the superintendents learn and pilot at some point? Raise your hand and we'll do a little picture. So I'm going to ask each of them at some point as we're providing a feedback out to you of what that means. So please continue to send the questions at info@Kovexa. And I also want to wrap by also really say thank you so much for your time. I really apologize. We should have made this an hour and a half, but there's a lot of information. It's a continuing developing market. And super thanks to AASA, Tammy, Noel, Lee, and Dave for really embracing this particular topic because it is going to be an interesting journey. Thank you to the panelists for your time as well. And so we will do some follow-up. There's other questions. Please continue to feel free to send us an email or contact. Thank you all.